Well, let's move away from that and back home now, because rumours have been floating around over the last week or so that the government was likely to U-turn around the national insurance tax rise to keep its backbenchers on side and calm fears over the cost of living crisis. But the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have instead decided to stick to their guns and agreed that the national insurance increase will go ahead. So what will the impact be for you, me and the wider economy? Vicky Pryce is the Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economics and Business Research and the former government advisor, of course. Thank you, Vicky, for joining us. Just talk about, first of all, the impact on us as individual taxpayers, because this is quite a significant increase that people will really notice in their pockets.
There will indeed, and that, of course, is going to come on top of everything else. So the calculations are that if you are earning £20,000, I mean, the first 9,500 do not fall into the category of being taxed at all for national insurance. But the rest is, and you may be paying something below £100 a year more. So it's not huge if you just look at that. But of course, it comes on top of everything else. Everything else includes the increase in energy costs, which is very substantial and is probably going to be many more hundreds of pounds. It comes on top, of course, of inflation more generally, which is rising faster than wages. So real incomes are being squeezed, except in some professions, but generally on average, they're being squeezed. And it comes on top, of course, of interest rates, which have been going up. And we're going to have another meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee this Thursday, and we're probably going to see yet another increase in interest rates. So that will be the second one since they started raising rates. And that, of course, hits pockets as well.
Indeed. And I'm a bit confused about all this, Vicky, because you've got the Labour Party saying that this is essentially a jobs tax and that they want to see a more progressive form of taxation to help pay for social care and the National Health Service. And yet the government argue this is a progressive form of tax. Who's right?
It's reasonably progressive until you hit a cap, which is around £50,000. From then on, anything extra, you only pay 2% additional, which really means that as you get to the top of the pay scale, your marginal rate is less than would be the case when you're further down. So it is quite progressive in the middle. But what it doesn't do, unlike a normal income tax, is that also it doesn't tax your savings, incomes from property that may come through rentals, for example. So it doesn't hit the people who perhaps are at the upper end of the wealth bracket. So it falls on workers. And I think that's what's being a concern, really, for the opposition. And it isn't very progressive when you go up to the higher end of the pay scale.
Also, because other MPs who oppose this tax say, well, actually, do we really need this now? As in, tax receipts were up towards the end of last year, putting extra billions into the economy. The economy is growing faster than had been predicted. And additionally, of course, with inflation helps to eat down government debt, which is kind of part of the reason for increasing taxes in the first place. So, fiscally, could the government, has it got the headwind, as we like to say, or the headroom, to not necessarily go ahead with this as we speak?
It does have the headroom, and it's been calculated that the headroom is quite substantial now because, indeed, they're collecting more taxes right now than they had expected. We have an unemployment rate which is considerably lower than had been anticipated, which means that many more people at work paying that tax. And also corporations have been paying more. So overall, yes, indeed, they are doing better than had been expected. And it is completely conceivable from a fiscal viewpoint to delay that by a year. But I think what they have judged is politically it doesn't make a huge amount of sense because that would suggest huge weakness. But we are seeing, as a result, loads and loads of other sort of carrots being given to backbench and, part of the right wing, if you like, of the Conservative Party to make them happier, like the COVID, the removal of the requirement for, possibly, we still have to wait and see whether that's true, for vaccines, for compulsory vaccinations for health workers. And there could be other sweeteners that come, particularly in regard with electricity prices and other gas prices for households that will be going up. So I think we're at the point right now where, there will be loads and loads of announcements to sweeten or also the voters and households who, of course, are going to be hit
indeed
hugely.
Well, those announcements are keeping us busy as well. Vicky, as always, thank you, Vicky Pryce there, joining us with her analysis this afternoon.